the JLAers and JSAers were able to rally together. They would actually have to work overtime. Not only were they working to help Alan take control over his life again, but the Starheart also used its power at one point to take both Jade and Obsidian and merge them into this weird hybrid being where basically the top half of the being looked like Obsidian and the bottom half looked like Jade. And I remember going on different social media platforms, message boards, where there were people talking about the story, and they were saying just the way this was drawn by Mark Bagley, it looked pretty crude. People are not pleased with this look, and there are some people who felt that it was rather insensitive in the way that this hybrid Jade Obsidian character was being presented visually. So there was that challenge which had to be overcome. But once Jade and Obsidian were separated from each other, Jade was able to help her father find his focus and find the will to fight back against the Starheart. And in the end, there was a really nice double splash page showing Alan back in his classic Green Lantern costume, back in control over his body, and a nice text piece by Jay Garrick saying that, this is Alan Scott, one of the greatest men, one of the greatest heroes the world has known. Alan is so great that at this point he has managed to take the entire Starheart into him, and he is using his immense willpower to hold himself together and to keep the Starheart's influence at bay. But the price would be that Alan would have to focus so intently every waking second, even when he was sleeping, lest the Starheart be able to rise up within Alan and consume him once more. So, as I said before, by the time this story, which I want to say lasted for 6 issues, came to an end, most readers are pretty thankful that the story was done and over with. One of the complaints was that, especially in the final chapter of the story, there appeared to be some very sloppy writing or some very poor editing, or maybe 6 of one, half a dozen of the either of each other. But at one point, Our Man was referred to as Rex Tyler, and Dr. Midnight was referred to as Charles McNider, which was clearly wrong, because at this point in time, Our Man was Rick Tyler, and Peter Cross was Dr. Midnight. And that really rankled fans who said, okay, Mr. Robinson, what's going on? You got to know who these characters are. For goodness sake, you wrote them during your time at the start of the first volume of JSA. And this series was edited by Eddie Berganza, and so he took a hit for such a gross overlooking of these glaring errors in the story. But what really bothered fans was the epilogue, which ran in an issue of Justice Society of America. On the one hand, it was kind of a sweet story in that Alan and Todd were spending some time together on the moon, looking over the Emerald City, which Alan had created while he was possessed by the Starheart. But Alan decided that the Emerald City was going to remain on the moon. It had since become populated by other magic users, and Alan certainly didn't want to create any ill will by telling them, hey, you've got to get out of here. He also threw in a mention that longtime JSA nemesis Mordru was now residing on the Emerald City, and he was playing nice. That bothered some fans who said, no, you shouldn't take Mordru. After all the evil things he's done, don't soften him up like that. But really, what really bothered the fans was a couple of things. One, Alan's voice came off as, pardon the pun, very wooden. And I know that when you're reading a comic book, unless you've got audio tape there, you have to hear the characters' voices in your mind. And so you can imagine what they sound like. So if you really want to, you could imagine a character speaking in an upbeat tone. But just the way Alan's words were written in this epilogue, you could see that Alan was speaking without any emotion. And there was a reminder for readers that Alan had to be really careful now. He couldn't be overly emotive. If he didn't watch his emotions and have control over himself, the Starheart would consume him again. The Starheart would reach out to Jade and Obsidian and merge them together into that mindless hybrid creature. But still, it seemed pretty sad for such a venerable character such as Alan that he had to come off, sounding so dry now. And the second thing was what happened with Jade and Obsidian as a result of the Starheart's encroachment on Earth and possessing Alan and then reaching out to Jade and Obsidian. Alan told his son that basically he couldn't come anywhere near to his sister. They would always have to spend or be a fair distance apart from each other. Otherwise, if they got too close, they would just merge again. And for Todd, this was a real killer because his sister was one of two people who he loved more than anything in the world, the other person being Al Rothstein, aka Nuklon or Atom Smasher. And so when Todd spoke out against this, really emotionally, one could just imagine Alan's response being along the line of, "Oh, Todd, I'm sorry, but this is how it is." It was just a real downer of an epilogue, and I'm so sorry that I have to speak so critically of this story. I think if this story was written by somebody other than James Robinson, I wouldn't feel quite as bad. But given Mr. Robinson's pedigree and his history with the JSA, that was the real sting in this story. And the concept of Jade and Obsidian having to stay apart, that was something which stayed in place for, I'm guessing, the better part of a year, maybe a year and a half. Unfortunately, that was something which creative minds at DC were willing to move past after a certain point in time. I don't think anybody wanted to appear to be undermining Mr. Robinson by taking anything which he wrote in the Dark Things and shuffling it under the rug, so to speak, so quickly. I think they wanted to wait until Mr. Robinson had moved on from DC and the story had passed from the collective consciousness for a time. As it is, Mr. Robinson's been very open about this in various interviews. He was going through some pretty tough times personally, and he's been very honest in stating that his personal issues were really affecting his work at the time. He wrote a tremendous take on the old-time character Airboy some years ago, and that was a very metatextual exploration of Mr. Robinson's past. personal difficulties. I think writing Airboy was almost therapeutic for him. And it's nice to see that Mr. Robinson is a more solid ground today. But just unfortunate how things turned out with the Dark Things. So I want to skip ahead to the last major story arc involving Alan Scott and, well, the entire JSA. This is the Monument Point arc. At this point, Flashpoint was, I'd say, a few months away. And I don't know that the writers on JSA, when they started writing the story, had any sense that there would be this reality-altering event coming up in the next few months. It may have been entirely coincidental that they decided to embark on the story. But in the beginning, Jay Garrick was actually looking at retiring from the JSA. He was actually considering running for mayor of Monument City. But the story took a dark turn very quickly as a villain named Scythe appeared and attacked the city and attacked the JSA. And Alan took on Scythe, and in the fight, Alan was paralyzed. His neck was snapped by Scythe. And now, of course, Alan, having a body that was composed of Starheart energy, could have easily used his Starheart energy to heal himself, but he didn't, and so he had to be rushed to hospital. His head was shaved, and he had emergency surgery on his brain and on his neck. And when he was in the recovery unit, he stated to everybody that if he did use the power of the Starheart to restore his physical self, the Starheart would just completely consume him, and then we get the Dark Things Part 2, which nobody really wanted. So for a time, Alan was off the table. However, he would return towards the last third of the final JSA arc, and he'd wear a new costume. It was a bit clunky in its design. It looked like Alan was wearing a white bodysuit, but then his torso was being protected by this giant green lantern. So he looked almost like a green lantern with white arms and legs and a head and a green domino mask to top off the look. And he did have his green cape as well. Now, Alan's fears about using his Starheart energy to resolve his paralysis were well founded. Not only did he have a different look, but his personality was also different. This was an Alan who was more gruff, more glib, somebody who spoke coarsely and didn't really consider other people's feelings. He also looked several years younger as well. And so it was clear to everybody on the team that this was a result of Alan using the Starheart to heal himself. This was an unfortunate consequence. As I recall, Alan worked to regain parts of his normal personality, but thanks to Flashpoint, this story did have to come to a rather quick conclusion, and in the end, the JSA had to face another villain named Darkin, and Darkin was immensely powerful, and Alan and the rest of the JSA realized that the only way to stop Darkin was for Alan to unleash the entirety of the Starheart upon Darkin. And so that's what Alan did. He unleashed all of his energy, killing Darkin, but it also caused Alan's body to incinerate.